The following podcast is a little fiery but mostly peaceful. If you're an automaton, turn away now and shelter in place. If you're a Catholic ready to renew your prescriptions of red pills and white pills, stay tuned. Hello and welcome to Catholics Aren't Zombies. I'm your host, Chris Munier. Here's episode 19. Can we talk about thievery? I think we have a problem with stealing in this country. And one of the most frustrating aspects of all this thievery is that it's pretty rampant. I think it's pretty obvious, but nobody pays a whole heck of a lot of attention to it. We're so used to spending much of our time worrying about the ugly sins that have manifested so severely lately, abortion, fornication, porn, rioting, family disintegration. And these are all really, really bad things. And I guess because they're so bad, it is focused all of our attention that direction just to be able to accommodate them at all. And we've forgotten about our other nasty little problem, this horrible violation of the seventh commandment that we know better on, and that is thievery. Now, of course, I just mentioned the rioting, and I guess that's that usually entails thievery. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I'm thinking back to those riots last year where there'd be people carrying out 10, 15, 20 boxes of tennis shoes, $100 pairs of tennis shoes, after having stolen them from some department store. Meanwhile, you got Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez saying, oh, hey, it's a bread riot. They're just doing it for bread. They need food. And, well, okay, that's a big old wad of you-know-what. No, we do have a problem with thievery. And there's about 3 different motivations that I identify when it comes to thievery. Greed, doing it for a thrill, and desperation. And folks, I'm sorry, and I know people are struggling a little bit right now, especially this last year or so, but I think desperation ranks in a very distant third. I'm only going to tolerate that for so much. I'm not going to give a whole lot of credence to AOC's little bread riot argument. And that's actually the only instance when you can steal, and even then it's a little murky. You're supposed to try to make up for it later, according to Catholic teaching. And then, okay, you do got some people that do it for thrill. Yeah, now, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, too, because I think our teenagers are resorting to that out of boredom. But then the big one really is greed. And if you've listened to me previously in some of my other episodes, you know how I feel about this issue of greed. It's that sin that sneaks underneath the surface. And see, if we really are being plagued by, first and foremost, these 2 wicked demons of greed and fraud, it makes sense that some of their tactics sneak under the surface and they're more clandestine and we don't notice it because we're paying attention to other stuff. But I want to provide you some examples of what I'm talking about. I don't want to just, rant for 20 minutes and not have anything to back it up. I've got an interesting article from this past January that I found. It's from smallbusinessgenius.net. The author is Milja Milinkovic. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that Serbo-Croatian name correctly. She wrote this back on January 11th, and the article is titled, Ripping Off the Boss, 33 Surprising Employee Theft Statistics. See, because we're going to go a little different direction with this. So we already know what happens when people go nuts and start stealing stuff during riots and, when they steal your hubcaps off your tires. But I don't think people realize the full magnitude of just how much people steal at work. And we're not just talking about office supplies here. And this is not so much of an article as they've got really good bullet points here. Here's some data I'm going to throw at you. And be ready. A little bit of numbers. Don't worry. I know 7/5 of all people don't understand fractions and all that. But don't worry. It's not too complicated. And this is related to workplace thievery. First point. Organizations around the world lose approximately 5% of their revenue to employee fraud and occupational abuse each year. 5%. May not sound like much, but just imagine it like this, guys. Let's say you go out and you do something that earns you $1,000. Well, how would you like to lose 50 of it? I know you're going to lose more than that from the freaking government, and they're going to steal it from you. But just from the occupational hazard of having a dipshit employee that steals some of your steals some of your money or steals some of your supplies. This is insane. This is a lot more than stealing a pen or two, or you work in a grocery store and you take too many food samples, or you take a watermelon home with you. It's a lot worse than that. I mean, to get up to 5%. Let's see what else. U.S. businesses lose up to $110 million a day due to employee-related crimes. $110 million per day. Wow. How would you like to have just 10% of that, throw it into a retirement fund, and you wouldn't have to work for the rest of your life? 110 million a day. This is what we mean by fraud, waste, and abuse. Next one. The average dishonest employee case value increased by 11% between 2018 and 2019. That seems like a pretty big jump, too. And those were, that was back before this crazy pandemic, recession, paranoid, riot, end of the world, doomsday stuff. That's a pretty big jump in just 1 year. So again, this is not just, people losing their minds lately. This has been creeping up on us. Next point. More than 2/3 of all corruption cases are perpetrated by a person in a position of authority. Whoa. So what does that tell you? 2/3 of the people who commit crime in the workplace and steal something have some level of authority in that organization. So it's not just that person you hired off the street for $10 an hour, stealing packs of bubble gum. Now, of course, as we say, when it's a position of authority, they don't define it really well. So that could be anybody from, basement level management all the way up to the CEO. And a lot of stuff in between. We know how hierarchical things are. But 2/3 of it is somebody who has presumably direct reports of some sort. So this guy or this gal, or whoever it would be in charge of discipline. They would be in charge of signing off on the other people's payroll. Let's not forget, it's one of the 4 sins that cry to heaven to mess up somebody's paycheck. To defraud a worker of their just wage, which is, I'll bet, how these corruption cases manifest. That is a major sin. That is up there with sodomy, murder, and oppression of the poor. And it's actually kind of the same thing as oppression of the poor, defrauding a laborer of their wages. So that one doesn't surprise me. But again, it's people and members of management that are doing this. Next one. A typical employee theft scheme lasts 14 months before it's detected. Yeah. So these can go on a while. Any kind of money laundering. It could be your little rinky-dinky town government for some community of 2,000 people. It could be your town clerk just, slowly but surely eking out $200 to $500 out of the, town coffers or something. And it'll be that little old lady who's in charge of it who nobody suspected. Again, thievery, it's more rampant than you think, guys. I would pay attention to this problem. Next one. The risk of billing fraud and payroll schemes is twice as high in small businesses compared to large businesses. So there you go. If you think it's a Walmart issue, somebody steals something on aisle 6, not necessarily. Like I just said, that could be a small town, a small business. Could be your lemonade stand. I don't know. Watch out, them little kids. Last point from this article. Only 4% of employee theft perpetrators have prior fraud convictions based on 2016 data. Only 4% of people who do this have a record of doing it. So these folks are not getting caught. Or if they do get caught, they're gone for good. But this leads me to believe, if I'm reading it correctly, that a lot of folks just get away with it. And so the employer will see it on their bottom line. They'll see they're hemorrhaging money somehow, and there's no other explanation. And, this is basically what it is. So it's sad, guys. This is what things have come to in the workplace. Completely unscrupulous now. And you think thievery is just nobody would do that. Everybody knows it's automatically wrong. And it is a really obvious violation of the 7th commandment. But people don't give a crap. That's what this tells me. And then I also have one other little nugget of news that I've uncovered. This is from March the 3rd, so not too many weeks ago. And coming out of the area in Iowa and Illinois known as the Quad Cities, there's 4 cities over there. One of them's Davenport, Iowa. That's kind of a big place. Bettendorf, Iowa. Oh, what are the other ones? There's actually 5 of them. What's going on here is they're actually experiencing a big uptick in the number of cars that are being stolen. And this is actually teenagers doing this. So let's see what this says. Detective Keith Kimball, not Detective John Kimball. This is the Bettendorf police chief. Said his department has seen an increase in kids stealing cars with an average age ranging from 12 to 17 years old. So it's our youngins. They've played too much Grand Theft Auto and they're taking it out into real life. And because they're bored to death with no school and having to wear face panties and everything being shut down, they're just going and stealing cars like crazy. So we now have right here in middle America, eastern Iowa. This isn't Philly. This isn't Compton. This isn't Brooklyn. Middle America, you got teenagers jacking cars now. We've now turned Middle America, Iowa, into Grand Theft Auto Vice City. And one of the other towns, like I said, Davenport. I think that's the biggest one out of the bunch. This is where John Deere makes a lot of his tractors and stuff. It's over 80% white, so you can't blame it on minorities or anything like that. Davenport police saw about 500 stolen cars in 2020. So that's more than a car per day stolen it's a fairly large city. I mean, I live near Raleigh. It's kind of close to, a little bit bigger than that. This is not a crazy metropolitan area. You expect this stuff in San Francisco or Seattle or one of the other left-wing urban hellholes I warn you about in Caesar Vacantism. This shows us, I think we got a problem, folks. And as I've said at the beginning, I think this is one of those that skates beneath the surface. We don't pay much attention to it. I mean, it's just not as gripping as some of these other problems. I know abortion's a bigger problem. I know porn is a bigger problem. I mean, if nothing else, porn's like a gateway to all kinds of nasty issues, including probably thievery. This is what porn and violent video games and stealing and rioting. This is a generation of people who don't have much to do and with unoccupied minds are going and they're doing incredibly destructive, degenerate stuff. And then sometimes when they fornicate too much after, getting into this lifestyle from the porn, from the overall lack of moral agency, it's nothing to them to commit the sin of abortion or to become career criminals even. So what do we do to fix this problem? People stealing in the workplace. Our children have turned into kleptomaniacs. What do we do about this? First and foremost, why don't we learn the 10 Commandments? There's only 10. Yes, it can be kind of detailed. There's a lot to each and every one of them. But how many people even know, Catholics? Because I know it's different from different denominations, but how many Catholics even know which of the commandments relates to stealing? It's the 7th, and I can see you getting it mixed up with the 8th, because that's the one that comes right after it. And lying, or another way of saying bearing false witness, kind of goes hand in hand with stealing. You lie, you cheat, you steal. So 7 and 8 are kind of related. But how many people even know which of those commandments is which? Basically what I'm saying is we at least got to pull our head out of our butt and get basic catechesis back. Because clearly we've got a generation that doesn't know better. They're left alone as latchkey kids for too long. We think that you can teach them on Zoom. After, of course, by the way, how many years and years of forcing them to live like prisoners in the classroom. That probably wasn't a terrific transition, I imagine. Final point I want to make about this topic of thievery is, again, don't forget that it's the state that has a monopoly on this wickedness. Hinted at it earlier, they're the ones that steal the most with their taxation schemes. And I don't even want to get into a huge argument, is taxation theft or not? Like, well, you know what? When they take over a quarter of it from you, I think we may be running into confiscatory territory. Oh boy. And of course, it doesn't stop at the income tax. It doesn't stop with the sales tax. It doesn't stop with the property tax. It doesn't stop with printing off money and the backdoor tax of devaluing the currency. Therefore, the money in your wallet is worthless. It doesn't stop with the value-added tax. It doesn't stop with all the excise taxes. It doesn't stop with the five-finger taxes. The state is absolutely the harbinger on this. And, frankly, as I wrote in Caesar Vacantism, they completely disregard the 5th and 7th commandments. The 5th one's, thou shalt not kill. We know they're bad at that one. Check out my other episodes. I talk about it a lot. But yeah, they can't follow the 7th commandment. How can we expect people to? The left has given us this idea that, well, you know what? Economics is just a zero-sum game. You might as well steal from that rich guy down the street. After all, they probably just inherited it. or they got it by some other unfair, nefarious means, one way or the other anyway. So, yeah, when in Rome, do like the Romans. Not everybody in America is a total degenerate creep yet, but it's getting worse. In the workplace, which is poisonous for various reasons. Our children don't care anymore, and we're just sitting idly by. All right, so to recap, we got to stop stealing. Come on, this is ridiculous. And it's not a venial sin. Usually it's not. Now, okay, if you steal the stupid pen from work, that's not good, but I don't think that constitutes a mortal sin. It has to be something grave, obviously, just by the definition of mortal sin. But when you shoplift, okay, this is, yeah, it's ridiculous. You're stealing merchandise from a company, from a business, a grocery store, or what have you. I think last time I checked, a lot of them are having some problems here. They can't afford this stupid crap. It's not too much of a stretch to say that rises to the level of grave sin. So it's not okay when you're just feeling like you got a pinch in your bank account to swipe a couple extra things and, well, yeah, they won't notice it anyway. Even if it's Walmart. Fine, I get Walmart's a bunch of bastards. But even still, again, it's the principle of the matter. We're not crazy consequentialists or anything here. Stealing is essentially caving into temptations of greed and envy. You envy what other people have. You allow your obsession with your passions and appetites to get the best of you, and then you steal. So don't do that. And bottom line, our society cannot possibly prosper with this widespread kleptocracy. Don't stoop to the level of the Washington, D.C. critters, those parasites, who all they do is steal. Don't stoop to that level. You're better than that. That's the end of the show. I hope you enjoyed it. I want you to go over to ditchthestateloveholychurch.com. That is my blog. I also want you to subscribe to this podcast. It's on the Apple, it's on the Pandora, it's on whatever the heck you're listening to it on. Subscribe, enjoy. God love you. Deus Vult. Cue the music.